In this video, we're going to be learning about asexual and sexual reproduction, and this comes from the topic of biological diversity. This video will be helpful to the students that want to learn about science and also do some programming as well. We'll first go over all the information needed to learn this topic, then at the end of this video, we're going to be enhancing our knowledge by creating a fractal tree inside of Python. So throughout this video, we're going to be covering the following topics. We will first go over what reproduction is. Second, we'll look at what asexual reproduction is. Third, we're going to be looking at different ways of how asexual reproduction can occur. Fourth, we're going to be going over what sexual reproduction is. Fifth, we're going to be going over different ways of how sexual reproduction can occur. And finally, sixth, we're going to be going over our Python code for creating a fractal tree. So let's get started with what reproduction is. So basically what reproduction means is just producing more of the same type of organism. Everywhere you look, there are examples of organisms that look like their parents. Some examples can be babies, they look like their parents. Seeds, they also look like their parents. And also bacteria. So bacteria cells divide themselves and they also look like their parents as well. So now that we know a little bit of what reproduction is, there are two main types of reproduction. And the two main types are sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. So basically sexual reproduction contains of two parents, and each parents provide a unique cell, and those cells combine to produce a new cell, and that new cell develops into a complete organism. And on the other hand, asexual reproduction only requires one parent. All of the offspring's genetics are clones of that single parent. So let's go in detail of what asexual reproduction is. So we already know that it involves only one parent and all of the DNA is identical to its parent. And this type of reproduction is most common among bacteria and fungi. And one positive feature about this is that the reproduction can occur really fast and there's no need to find a mate. And some more examples of asexual reproduction is with bacteria, starfish, hydras, fungi, and there's many more as well. So now we're going to be going over the 5 different ways that asexual reproduction can occur. So the first one is binary fission. The second one is spores. The third one is budding. The fourth one is vegetative regeneration. And the fifth one is fragmentation. So let's start with what binary fission is. So many one-cell organisms such as amoeba reproduce asexually using a form of cell division called binary fission. So binary fission basically when the cell duplicates its nucleus and its other organelles. A new cell has a copy of the genetic material as well as half of the cytoplasm. So binary fission is just basically the division of cells. And binary fission occurs in prokaryotic cells. And another type of binary fission is also called mitosis. And this usually occurs in eukaryotic cells. And this process is more complex than binary fission. But in both cases, that one cell divides into 2 different cells. So that's basically what binary fission is. Now let's go over what spores are. So some fungi such as mushrooms can reproduce asexually by forming single-celled reproductive structures called spores. A single mushroom can produce about 13,550 spores in one side of its gill. And after the spore matures, then it bursts and the spore scatters. And also each spore multiplies itself by mitosis to spread around. And you can visualize this by looking at an old bread inside of your house. So for example, if you just look into your fridge and if you just leave a piece of bread hanging there for a long time, you're going to see some molds coming up. And that's usually because the spores get to start to spread around all over the place, just like the mushrooms in a field. So that's basically what spores are. Now let's go over what budding is. So some animals such as sea sponges and hydra reproduce asexually by budding. A cell, usually near the base of one of these organisms, produces a new group of cells called a bud. And when the bud has developed, then it detaches itself and becomes independent. I'll also put a video up about this right now. What budding is. So now let's go over what vegetative regeneration is. So let's say a portion of a plant is cut off and is placed in a very positive environment. And that same exact plant will have the exact same copy of the original plant. And this is because there's the type of tissue found in every single part of the plant, so even if you cut it off and then you replant it, then it's still going to grow. And this is what usually most people do. They cut off a parent stem, which is used to produce exact copies of the same plant. And if you just cut the stem, then that same plant will grow again and become just like its parent. And it has exact copy, exact DNA, exact everything about its parent as well. I'll now put a video about this right. So that's basically what vegetative regeneration is. So now we're going to be going over what fragmentation is. So this is also kind of like the vegetative regeneration. Basically, we can take an example of a starfish. If you cut the starfish in from the sides, if you cut it in 4 different parts, then once again it'll completely grow back to how it was looking originally, and then you'll have 4 different types of starfish as well. So this connects to the vegetative regeneration as well. And that's basically the 5 types of asexual reproduction. So now let's go over what sexual reproduction is. So sexual reproduction is basically when a new offspring is produced by combining the genetic information of 2 parents. Because the offspring has genetic information from both parents, it will look a little similar to both parents, but it will still be different from both of the parents. And this type of reproduction increases the genetic variation in the population. So now we're going to be going over the different forms of sexual reproduction. So the first one is sexual reproduction in animals. The second one is sexual reproduction in plants. The third one is called bacterial conjugation. And the fourth one is zygospores. So let's start with the first one, which is sexual reproduction in animals. So basically, both male and female gametes must arrive at the same place at the same time for fertilization. And the gamete is a general term for the sperm or egg. And the zygote requires specific conditions in order for it to develop. And once the 2 gametes meet, then the zygote is formed, and it's also called fertilization. And finally, once the zygote grows, and then it divides into an embryo, which is basically a born human or animal in the early stages of growth. So now let's go over sexual reproduction in plants. So how does a fruit come to be? So first, the cell of an organism is called a zygote, and the female reproduction organ is called a pistil, and the male is a stamen. So pollen grows one extension called a pollen tube. And the zygote does many cell divisions to form an embryo, and then the embryo supplies with cotyledons. I'll now place an image or a video showcasing how sexual reproduction in plants work. So that's basically how sexual reproduction in plants work. So now let's go over what bacterial conjugation is. So bacterial conjugation is basically when bacteria are able to transfer genetic material directly from one cell to another cell with bacterial conjugation. And bacterial conjugation is a form of sexual reproduction since 2 parents are involved. And following the conjugation, new cells will be produced by binary fission. I'll now place a picture or a video of how bacterial conjugation looks like. So that's basically what bacterial conjugation is. So now let's go over the best of both worlds. So many organisms are capable of both asexual and sexual reproduction. Rhizopods produce spores. Their spores may be black, blue, yellow, or red. And rhizospores can also produce sexually by forming zygospores. and unlike asexual spores, zygospores contain genetic material for two sources. And a zygospore is basically a reproduction stage in the life cycle of many fungi and protists and plants. And zygospores are created by the nuclear fusion of cells. So that's basically it for sexual and asexual reproduction. And now we're going to be moving on with our Python code. So today we're going to be creating a fractal tree using Python Turtle. This is just a fun piece of code that can help us to relate to what a parent and an offspring plant looks like. So I already have all the code here, and you can copy it down if you would like to. And let's get started with the code here. So first we're just going to be importing Turtle, which will help us with our code later on. So Turtle is basically just a drawing library that helps us to actually draw our fractal tree. And here we're just going to be writing from Turtle import star and also just import Turtle. So next we're going to be setting our speed to fast. So the turtles, it makes our drawing pretty fast, and you can make it slow if you want, doesn't really matter here. And then here we're going to be making the turtle face upwards. For the stem or like the trunk of the tree, we're just going to be making it look, the turtle's head look up, so then it'll just draw a straight line up. And then here we're going to be making an acute angle between the base and the branch of the Y. So basically once it goes up the 90 degrees, then it's going to go to the angles of 30 degrees. And then here we have our function to plot a Y, which will basically make our actual like tree values look there. And here's the function. So you can just copy this down here. So we're just writing if level is greater than 0, then we're just going to change the color mode here. And we're going to be splitting the RGB range for green into equal intervals for each level. And those are going to be setting the color accordingly to the current level. So here we're just going to be making it look green at the top, so that's basically what this is all doing here. And then here we're just going to be drawing the base of the tree. And here this is also going to help us with drawing our actual tree here, and same for this. So all of this here is just helping us to draw the Y. So next, if we come down here, this is what changes the shape of the tree. We're going to experiment with this later on. We're going to be changing this value a lot of times. And then here we're just going to, our last line of code states turtle.exit on click, and this will just close our program when we click the X, so we don't have to keep on running it over and over until it stops. Alright, so that's basically all our code here, and now let's run the program to see how our tree looks like. So as of right now, we see that this is what our tree looks like. It's pretty small, but we can increase the size later on, which I'll show you how to do. But first of all, we know that if we go back to our code here, we see that it goes to the angle of negative 90 degrees, right? So it goes upwards like this, and then it makes its first Y, which is a 30 degrees angles. And then here we have our function here, which makes it go into more Y's here. And the way that this relates to a parent and an offspring plant is basically, you can see that this one line here is basically the same as this line. It's basically the same as this one, and even these as well. So these are basically all the same thing, and if you were to cut this off and then plant it, then it just become a new plant again, the same parent plant. So now let's make this tree a bit bigger. So all we have to do is increase this number 4 here. So let's just say 9 for this example, which I'm pretty sure this one will increase the amount of branches there are. And yeah, so there you go. So since we increased this to number 9, now we're going to have way more branches instead of before. So before we only had a few branches, and now we're going to have a very detailed looking tree here. This is taking, maybe we can reduce this a bit to maybe 6. And let's rerun that, because that one took a little bit of time. Yeah, so there we go. So that's a better looking tree here. And you can see that it is much bigger than the other one. And yeah, so also we can change this up. I'm pretty sure this one makes the size of the tree smaller or bigger. Yeah, so this one basically, this one here, the first one, makes the size smaller or bigger, and then this one here, this one increases the amount of branches. So you can put it higher for more branches or lower for less, and this higher for the bigger size, or this lower for smaller size. Yeah, so that's basically it for all of our Python code here. And that's also it for this video. If you guys ended up enjoying this video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe, because it does take some time to make these videos, and it would really mean a lot to us. So thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one.